everybody, welcome back to Easy Weeknight Cooking with Heart's Desire Spice Blends. And tonight we're doing something simple, super simple, but really tasty. One of our customers, Val Starkroff, came up with this beautiful butternut squash recipe that you can do either in the oven or in the crock pot. And what's more is you can do this with pumpkin with fabulous results. So it gives you a really great thing to do with that pumpkin that you've got left over from last night that you're going, okay, what do I do with this, Natalie? So what are we going to need? We're going to need 24 ounces of squash, or 1.5 pounds. That is the equivalent of a small butternut squash. So we're also going to need 1/4 cup of butter, 1/4 cup of dark brown sugar. I highly recommend dark brown. Why? The molasses notes in it are fabulous and do so well. You can use light brown. You'll probably use just a little bit more of it because those rich notes from the molasses are really something you want. Now, you can use regular white sugar and add a little bit of molasses to it and mix it all through the white sugar if you don't have any brown sugar. It works fabulous. So you're also going to need 1/2 teaspoon of our jambalaya mix. This is going to make a beautiful sweet and spicy butternut squash or pumpkin or whatever else kind of squash you've got. I've done this on delicata squash after I've taken the seeds out, what I did is I just coated a chicken tender with what we're going to be doing and stuffed it in that delicata squash. It was so good. Oh my gosh. So why don't we go ahead and get started? First thing you're going to do is you're going to approach your squash. Now this one I've already cut in half. First of all, you're going to need to take out the seeds. I recommend a spoon with some kind of rough edges on it. If you've got a set of spoons that isn't perfectly smooth, beautiful. I love it. The reason why is it's almost serrated, not quite, and a really smoothly well-polished spoon will not cut the membranes of that squash well. So go ahead and just scrape all of the membranes out. If you've been cutting up pumpkins recently, you got this. Seriously got this. Next, you're going to need to skin this. Not all squashes need to be skinned, but the acorn squash, the butternut, and the pumpkin definitely will. Delicata, you can actually eat the skin. It's beautiful. But for this, you're going to want yield potato peeler and start with the bottom. Just go ahead and shave off that skin. And I like to start with all the edges first. Oh, and I have cut off the stem end because we just don't need that. That's really tough to work around. So cut it off before you even start. So I like to get all of the edges on my squash done first and then just peel it like you do a potato. Oftentimes you've got some bits that are a little bit odd, and if your potato peeler isn't the sharpest in the world, you're gonna have to play around with how this gets done the best. And so I have here half of a delicata squash that I have already done this with, so why don't I go ahead and show you how to cut it up. You're going to be wanting no more than 1-inch pieces here, and you're going to be wanting chunks. So oftentimes you can just cut between 1/2 inch and 1 inch slices on your squash. Make sure you've got a good sturdy knife here, one that will not slip on you when you're trying to cut this in half or cut it any other way. So go ahead and cut this up widthwise first, or else you get a chance of your knife turning on you, and you don't want that. And then just go ahead, cut it into cubes from there. You are pretty much done. Going to cut the root end real quick. And there, my friends, you have how to chop up your delicata squash. I'm thinking I probably want to go ahead and peel this guy really quick if it will let me. Sometimes they peel quickly, sometimes they're a little bit more needy, my darlings, and they take a little bit more time. Kind of depends on your peeler. Now you can also get pre-cubed squash in the freezer section of most grocery stores, and that is a seriously easy hack. If you can do that, do it by all means. If you do have pumpkin or other decorative squashes that you want to do something with so they just don't go to waste, please play with this recipe with it. It is fabulous. So transfer these to a medium to large size bowl. You want some tossing room there. Now we are going to be doing these in the oven. So while this is melting in the microwave, I'm going to be showing you what to do with that brown sugar and jambalaya. Give me a sec. Okay, I'm starting with 30 seconds on high for that butter, and I'm gonna bring over my 1/4 cup of brown sugar and just dump my 1/2 teaspoon of jambalaya mix right in there. Now, if you want to go full on sweet, ditch the jambalaya mix and use either 1/4 teaspoon of our pumpkin spice or 1/4 teaspoon of our chai spice instead of the jambalaya. Meanwhile, the jambalaya does a fantastic job of adding a little bit of a savory bite at the very end when you're working with this. So good. I've got my butter all nice and melted. I'm gonna let that cool here on the counter for just a minute. Meanwhile, pick up a fork and you're going to mix that jambalaya mix and your brown sugar really well. Now, if you're using chai spice or pumpkin spice, do the same. Why? Because you want the flavors to be the same throughout this entire thing. You want that itty bitty bit of spice to just go over every single piece of this squash. It is so good. So give that a really good stir to make sure it's all incorporated well. And I can smell it already. It is fantastic. Oh my gosh. And bring over your squash. Now, if you're doing this in the crock pot, just dump this over the top and dump the butter in there. You're good. Now, if you're doing this in the oven over here, trust me, this is the way you want to go. Put your spice and brown sugar mixture in first. Now, your squash will be cooler than your butter, and we are counting on that here. So throw your butter in, and now you're going to mix this. And as the spice and the sugar and the butter all interact with every single lump of this squash, you're going to get things relatively evenly distributed. And if you want to start off with cold squash, this will work really even better. Why? Because the fat molecules of the butter will congeal to the squash. And we like that. Now, you can do this 2 ways. You can put this on a foil-lined baking sheet and put it in the oven that way. Or you can put this in a glass dish. And my personal favorite is if you go ahead and make it evenly distributed across your pan with every single piece touching the surface. Why? You get more caramelization. Now, if you're doing this in a crock pot, you can so mash this. Oh my gosh, so good. And if you find that pieces of squash are sticking together, break them apart and give it another couple tosses. Now, this can go aside. Why? You're gonna see what this comes out at right over here. And my mouth is watering already. There we go. I'm gonna put these aside and bring out this yumminess. So good. So this, my darlings, has been in a 400-degree oven for between 45 and 50 minutes to get this beautiful texture. Now, if you've got a slightly slow oven, that's fine. You just need a little bit more time. And does it reheat well? You bet. You need to see this. It's a little warm at the moment. I wonder why. Isn't that gorgeous? You can see some of the caramelization already, and the texture is divine. So beautiful. As these have contact with the bottom of the pan and with the air in the oven at that high temperature starts to caramelize the sugars straight onto the squash, and it makes them taste like candy. So, my darlings, is that beautiful or what? So good. You see some of the browning on there, and it is fantastic. The texture is to die for. I'm not dying anytime soon for this though. It's like candy. Oh my gosh. It's got this beautiful texture to it that's more waxy than a baked potato. It's kind of like a mix between a baked potato and a soft caramel. It's so good. You've got several different tastes going on. The background is definitely that beautiful squash, which has a lot of native sweetness to it. And then sooner or later, you taste those flavors in the jambalaya mix come out, and you get a little bit of heat just right back here. If after making this recipe once you say, I need more heat, Natalie, go ahead and add a little bit more jambalaya mix. Meanwhile, this is a beautiful way to get that indescribable, just wonderful, what did you do? This is awesome reaction from the people around your table. So from our house to yours, that is sweet and spicy squash, and it is fabulous. You guys, keep things tasty. Give me an email at natalie@heartspice.com with any questions, comments. So meanwhile, keep things tasty, and we will see you next week.